Hi, you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Before we start today, please take a moment to rate the podcast. This helps us get seen so much. For example, if you're on Spotify, all you have to do is scroll up, hit those 5 stars, hopefully, and you have given us a rating and just so much help. Thank you so much if you've already done that. This video is also available in full form as a video, not just audio, on YouTube. This episode is sponsored by Big Tex Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear to responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. Today, I'm particularly excited about this episode. I have Julie Willis, the founder, CEO, a friend, and now a boss of mine, on the podcast. Julie, I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Oh, thank you. I like your version, but yeah, I am the founder of Zendira, and I've been in business for a few years, and I'm happy to be here. I've never been on your podcast, even though we've known each other for a little while.
Absolutely. I think I may have stood you up the last time we planned to as well. I think I felt comfortable enough with you to be like, I have no bandwidth today. Can we do this a different day or something? But I think now is honestly the best time because we've worked together for a few weeks now. We've really kind of synced our ideas when it comes to off-body carry, which if you all haven't heard of Zendira, that is a hint at what it is. I'm going to let Julie tell that story. But I'm particularly excited about this timing because of the things that we've already come together to do. So speaking of, how did you, Julie, get into the firearms industry?
Face first. I didn't know anything. I had been a government contractor. I was at state, Homeland Security, and with the Army. So I knew how trained people did things, but I was not one of those people. So one night I had recently been fired, and I was staying at a friend's house, and she was having people over, and I really did not want to sit across from folks and, when they say, oh, what do you do? And I go, I don't. I just got fired. But I did. And I ended up across from a woman who was a realtor in Austin. And her husband was an undercover cop. And I was talking to her about how she felt like being, a realtor in the city because it was post 2020 and there was a lot of issues. And she was really blunt that she was scared to go into houses by herself. And then she said that she put a pistol in her Louis bag, like the big buckets. And I was like, I don't know much, but I know that's a really terrible idea. And after that night, I started looking into it and I was like, what are women doing? Just out on the streets. Like I knew what they were doing when they were badged, as federal law enforcement, but it was wild to see what the industry was and what we were doing for women and not doing. Like things that, badged law enforcement would never think to do was the bulk of the market. And so I actually left. I was on my way back to Mexico, and I left that Sunday. And I was in a factory on Friday having conversations with them about doing it. And I had no idea what it meant. I was just there for the ride. So that's how it started. That was 2021, April 2021.
Wonderful. Well, your story is so inspiring. I've heard you explain it to me. Of course, you've told me a few times. And every time I hear it, it's just so refreshing to hear that you took a problem and then went right on to create a solution. I know that's like the simplest way I could summarize that, but there really is so much to be said about that, especially in this industry where most of the off-body carry solutions, the hybrid carry solutions, especially when I started, as a just concealed carrier did not seem safe enough to even consider. And, I think I'll just go ahead and address it now. Like, there is a very negative stigma surrounding off-body and hybrid carry. And just to kind of clarify, hybrid carry I consider to be bags that are strapped around you, kind of like this bag here, which we'll talk about soon, but that's kind of strapped around your like chest, or even like in the fanny pack style around your hips. And so the bag is more so a part of you than it would be if it was just kind of like around your wrist or around your shoulder, kind of like on a shoulder bag. So I'm going to refer to that as hybrid today, just because I do see those as slightly different. I think we've had a few discussions where there are different considerations for the two modes of carry. So I'm very happy to see that you care so much. And I want you to brag on yourself a little bit when it comes to the training and education you've had so far with off-body hybrid carry. Take us down the path. What have you done?
Well, first I started just pure imposter, not even imposter syndrome. Like, I knew I was an imposter. Like, I went to SHOT Show and I would not reach out and pick anything up because I knew the instant I did, they would know that I had no idea what I was doing. So that was fun. I think I went like 2 years like that because I went 1 year as a contractor before. But the second year I had my bags at Crossbreed because I used their executive inside the waist belt, inside the Monday and Tuesday bags. And inside there's a tactical belt sewn in, like where a belt would normally be. And so I'd been working with them to include those. And so they had my bags at their booth, and it was like day 3. I was exhausted. They had a couch. And so I found myself kind of slumped in, talking to some folks. And pretty quickly he was like, yeah, do you see that lady over there? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you need to go talk to her. And I was like, really? Like, introvert, day 3, SHOT Show. That's the last thing, absolute last thing I wanted to do. But I did. And she had some they weren't pointed, they were specific questions. And what I learned was that firearms instructors have a very specific way of asking questions to give you an opportunity to either show what you know or what you don't know. And that is how it started. So she had asked me, how would I draw from this? Where would I hold it? How am I going to stabilize this bag? What if this happens? And I had, I think, enough questions and answers that I don't know to this day if I was actually correct, but it was worth it to her then to offer to train me. It wasn't an offer. It was a challenge.
Ooh, I like that.
I was challenged by the Vicki Farnham to come to a class that was coming up in just like a few weeks, I think, in Texas. Because I had told her that, we were based in Texas, but I'm usually down in Mexico, which is where I am right now, because that's where the factory is. And so I didn't tell her, you don't get into those details with someone like Vicki Farnham. You just say, yes, ma'am, I'll be there. Where is this? And I went, and what a transformative weekend. From the first conversation, that first night was a lecture, and then you get all that time on the range, and it was just me and one other person. So it was a semi-private class with Vicki Farnham, and she took me from 0 to what felt like 100.
I'm sure.
Time. Yeah. And I think it was just day 2. We actually came up with the bag that you have in front of you, because what I learned was there was another guy there, and he had really big hands, and he had a Glock 19 with all the lights and lasers and dots and all the fun stuff that was really quite intimidating to me at the time. And it wouldn't fit in the regular Friday, and his hands certainly wouldn't fit around it and going in and out of the bag. And so I was like, okay, let's just do this. So we recorded a quick video. I sent it to the factory owner, and before you know it, we had a prototype of that full-size bag. So it changed the product real quick.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I've been back, I don't know, 3 more of Vicky's classes, I think. Yeah.
Including her instructor course, right?
Yes, but only auditing.
Okay.
But I went to that twice with other instructors. But yeah, I mean, this is it turns out this is a passion that I stumbled upon. And it's pretty cool to spend a weekend with a bunch of people that are learning about it. And because I get not only, the baseline, but I also get the words they use. I get them saying, well, why isn't it like this? And you're like, why isn't it like that? Like that. Okay. That's a thing we could do. So it's solid gold. Really. It really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And, we've had this conversation, just the two of us, and before we get into kind of the nitty gritty of the bags and off-body carry and those fun topics, I'd love to know how you as an individual and as a shooter have evolved from the beginning when you took on this project to now that you've taken multiple courses, you've really gotten to meet the community in person, get feedback, answer questions. What has changed about you?
Other than a lot. Right. I think as we're looking at SHOT Show around the corner, and starting off by starting off by saying, I went and I refused to reach my hand out because I didn't want to be known. I didn't want to be spotted as the imposter that I felt like I was. And now, I find myself having the most random conversations where someone says, oh, I have this. And I'm like, do you have the CT? You got those laser grips? What are we doing here? Because I need to know all those details for making sure that they get the right kydex on the first try. So it's gone from absolutely 0 to functional. I think so. Yes. I did my first competition. Oh gosh, was that September, October? It was pretty recent.
Indiana was September.
Yeah, it was September.
That was October. It's been a blur. Yes.
Yeah. And the first shots I ever took with this giant canic were as I turned around and took aim. So it was, it's actually the way that I've always trained because I'm usually flying up from near the factory in Mexico where, you're definitely not going to have your firearm because that's not a thing. And I get there and I'm like, what have we got? What am I using? And I get usually a Glock or an M&P and it's battlefield pickup every single time. Right. So that was really fun to just turn around, grab it and figure it out. They all kind of worked the same, except this was a red dot too. So that added a whole extra element of fun, but I did hit all the steel. So I was pleased. That was all that mattered to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love me some steel. That auditory confirmation it just scratches an itch for me personally. So no, but that's so exciting. So you have the perspective of competition shooting as well. Even if it's, even if it's just one match, you now can speak to that experience, especially coming from the concealed carry world, which is just going to make you a more informed producer, because you're not a consumer in the sense of your own bags. You're a producer. And something about Julie I love, I think I mentioned earlier, I had my own set of apprehension coming into the off-body carry space, learning that there was someone making her own bag line and then also educating herself alongside her bags to improve the bags, but also improve how you can help the community purchasing your bags, is just so impressive to me. It makes me feel encouraged for the future of concealment options for women and men. If we want to talk about that today, that's up to you. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing, and I feel grateful to even be part of Zendira at all. When it comes to getting into the firearms space, in general. And just so you know, listeners, we did not go over questions before this episode. We just kind of jumped in. We've had about 30 minutes worth of technical difficulties. So we're really just, it's like 9 p.m. So we're hitting it right now. We're in it, diving it together. And, but yeah, Julie, I'd love to know, as a shooter, starting out, you kind of started from the other side of things. You started from building the bags, and then you were like, oh yeah, I need to know this stuff. Oh, this stuff is fun. Like, oh, there's a whole community. This is so cool. And like, you've really built yourself up. I'd love to know what it was like to just start from the beginning, your personal experience.
It's a very general. I have Vicky Farnham.
Yes.
And the instructors around her. I mean, I can still hear them in my ear, right? Like, I can hear the, steady and like smooth flat back, because inevitably I still struggle with low left. I don't get enough time on the trigger, so I am apprehensive, but also I'm pretty sure I could get the job done. So we'll be okay. But it surprised me that other folks hadn't done the work. I think I came into an industry that I thought everyone had already done the work. They had been to these classes. They, had absorbed it maybe from a family member or something like that. And it turns out they didn't, and they don't. And I had no idea. I thought everybody knew so much more than me. And then I show up and I'm standing next to somebody who says, like, oh, my husband usually clears my, she didn't say clears my malfunction, because she didn't have the vocabulary for it, but she was like, oh, my husband usually helps me when this happens. And I was just like, wait, what? That was never an option. Wait a minute.
Right.
I never had anybody next to me. It was always, the voice of an instructor being like, tap rack, let's go, stay in the fight, that kind of stuff. And, I'm grateful for the narrative that plays in my head when I even had a weird dream recently where I was in a cafe and, there was an active shooter situation. And I mean, I got all the way like through it to the end to where I was like basically explaining, hey, I need a lawyer. I got this dream went start to finish. And I was like, this is not okay. Like, I think I need a break if this is where I'm going at night.
Are you ready to step up your shooting game? Introducing Walkers Inc., the pioneers in ear protection for shooting, hunting, and commercial applications. For over 25 years, they've been revolutionizing the industry, ensuring your hearing safety and enhancing your shooting experience. Anytime I'm on the range, indoor or outdoor, I use Walkers ear protection to have crystal clear communication with my fellow shooters. I personally use the disruptors for outdoor shooting and the recons for my indoor shooting adventures. Not only does it protect your hearing, but it also protects you. Being able to communicate with others on the range is vital to personal safety. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your safety when the ultimate goal is better self-protection. With Walkers, you'll experience unparalleled comfort, unmatched innovation, and the industry standard in shooting ear protection. Don't settle for anything less when it comes to your safety and enjoyment on the range. You can save on Walker's ear protection and support the podcast by using code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20 at checkout. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout.
I was actually at the YMCA that was next door to the where the congressional softball shooting was. I think it was 2018. But like my version of that shooting was very different, I think, than the folks who were upstairs, because I was down in the locker room when it happened, and I heard my spin instructor, who I knew was FBI, and I heard his voice, and a bunch of women, came flooding into the locker room, and he said, "Get in and stay in," and I was like, "Got it." Like, that's all I needed to know. And I had been at State Department for a while, and so I knew, from their active shooter training, like, okay, let's start reinforcing doors. What are we doing? And we heard the helicopters landing. Like, nobody came to get us. They didn't really realize we were down there. We were we were so comfortably in our little cocoon that we had built. But
oh
it
my
was an
goodness,
experience for sure. But it's funny, because there's folks upstairs that were, calling in and having conversations with the news, and then there's this guy that took it upon himself to take people out of what could have been harm's way and, get them where they needed to be. And he's absolutely standing there silent. And we just ended up walking out the back door. But the wild thing is the shooter was in there every day for a month before the actual shooting. Like, I passed him leaving to go to work every day for a month. And I had that icky feeling, but I didn't know why. And, there's books on that feeling, and
right.
And thankfully there are, because it did shape, I think, when it was time for me to start this company, how that happened. And, my mindset was already, because of like traveling with state and having a security clearance, like, you just prepare yourself differently for the day. And so starting with Zendira, I put in some level 3A armor that fit in the first bag that I did, because for me, that's an obvious, like, I wish I had that when I, was unfortunately in a similar situation. So it definitely shaped how this happened, even though I didn't come in as a shooter, but I definitely came in security minded.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very sorry to hear that happened. I did not know that story. I can't imagine. And I appreciate you taking the time to share it today. Unfortunately, that's a common theme in this industry, that there's a lot of trauma that has led to action. We do our best to prevent. And I mean, you were even safety minded before that incident. You had the gut feeling, but there's only so much we can do. And the fact that you've created a brand that has taken from multiple, it's almost like your whole life you've been primed just to do this. This is so cool. I've never heard of anything like this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think that's a perfect segue to talk about the creation of your first bag, because it's really cool to see the evolution of the bags you've created and the purpose behind them. A really good example, kind of just to highlight why I want to go into this isn't common. There are a lot of bag brands, off-body brands out there that are just trying to sell to women because we are a great demographic to sell to. And you can tell in the construction of the bag. And there are a few criteria that I like to preach about a safe and effective off-body bag, which we'll get into. And your bags check all of that, of course, or we wouldn't be here, or we would in a different, capacity. We'd be making a new bag or something, which we might be doing. No, but your bags check all of those little criteria I have myself. So yeah, if you don't mind, let's start with the creation of the Monday bag. That was your first bag, correct?
Monday was the first bag.
And I have it here. So as you're talking, I can grab it. I know, it's crazy.
I have mine too.
You have yours? Amazing. Let's do it. Let's talk about it. I'm going to move the Friday.
Mine's a hot mess inside though.
I think.
Because so am I.
That's so funny. I still have my body armor is the biggest thing in here right now.
Oh, nice. This stuff is good.
It is good.
9 pounds.
Yes. Super light. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So how did you go about this? There's a better way to ask that, but
yeah. The Monday was the bag that I wish I'd had when I was working in DC, even though you don't conceal carry in DC. At least I certainly didn't have any paperwork to make me eligible for that. But it was the bag that, again, going back to being security minded, like I took the subway or I rode the bus because that's how everybody gets around in DC. And that meant, having a clearance meant anything that's in that bag that a foreign adversary may want, you need to be darn careful that they don't get it or the information on it. So like all of those privacy screens, like I still have a privacy screen, which makes life a little bit more difficult when you try and show somebody a picture and you're like, gotta line it up.
It's very awkward.
It's super awkward.
Worth it.
But also now I find myself like on planes and I'm like looking at firearms and you're like, that's not okay. Like that will freak out, you know, the row behind me, and they don't need to be panicked by my Google search to Handgun Hero as to what the dimensions are of an equalizer, which happens all the time. But the Monday also has like twist lock clips. Oh, I don't know why I'm explaining it. Here it is. But just like carabiner style, because I wanted to make sure that if somebody was standing behind me on the metro, you know, if they're going to try and take my bag by like unclipping it and bolting when the metro stops, I want to just make it harder. Like, let's just make it harder. So I went with the twist lock clips. I went with dual zippers so that you can bring them to the front of you, you know, grab it with your hand while it's crossbody with metal cables so it can't be cut. You know, like, let's just make it harder. Because when I started, the conversation around off body was so different than it is now. And I have to credit a lot of the influential males and females that have also come out with like, especially fanny packs, because they've changed the conversation and also like, I think dragged a lot of other manufacturers kicking and screaming towards more usability. Because like you mentioned, like you can tell if it's a money grab. If a manufacturer is like, you know, out and about and they're like, oh, this is cute, I bet I could put a gun in this. And then they do. And you're like, but she can't get it out. Stop.
Right.
Stop. So if I may.
Yes, you may.
I would like to see, thank you. I'd like to see these bags that, you know, scroll past on Instagram. Like, I want to see the designer actually shoot with it. Like, have someone run at you, even. Get it out. Let's see if this thing works. Because that's, what else are we doing?
Right.
If we're not making it better for women and men, then don't make the thing. So.
I'm with you.
There. I'm on my soapbox preaching over here. Stop.
And of all of the people to step on said soapbox, you have a well-deserved position to do that. Something I've always prided myself on is testing the gear I work with. I've yet to like take these to a jiu-jitsu class. I'm super excited about that. But I have done that with some other concealment bags. And there is something to be said about even if you don't train that every week, like say, you know, the perfect individual would take their off-body bag, their IWB holster, any other form of or method of concealment, take it to their combatives gym and try to access it and train, you know, weapons-based combatives and do all that stuff. That's our like star student. That's amazing. It only takes a couple times of someone trying to yeet your bag from you for that experience to really stick with you and make an impression for training and the purpose of good gear, including what the bag is. You know what I mean? 'Cause there are some really unfortunate options out there that I didn't even realize. And this is not to shame people who don't realize this. This is actually the opposite. This is to help validate if you're listening and you don't know anything about off-body, but you've only really heard negative things and you're listening to this podcast because you want to learn about it more. First of all, amazing to you. Secondly, that was me without the podcast help. I remember I got a fanny pack, and just for the sake of this episode, if you're a listener and you want to know the brand, I'm happy to share it with you one-on-one. I actually have it in a YouTube video on my channel, but for the sake of this episode, we won't mention maybe other brands in a negative light. So go check that video out. I'll link it in the show notes if you want to know what it is. But there is a fanny pack that, oh my gosh, it's wild. So they have a drawstring. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if I've complained about this to you. Yes. You unzip and then you pull a string and it pops your gun up in this like felt holster, which theoretically you can't pull the trigger through. But I have had my gun literally yeet out of that bag as I pull the drawstring. I've also had the drawstring get caught. I've had the zipper get caught. There are like layers of issues you can have. All this to say, if you go into off-body carry not knowing what to look for, you might fall victim to these brands that don't even have concealment in mind. Mm-hmm. It's a tragedy, but it happens a lot. And I think that's why off-body gets such a bad rap. And I'm on a soapbox now, but,
come up here with me.
Right. Yeah. Jesus, let's step up there. There are several reasons why off-body carry is a reasonable form of carry, maybe even necessary. And I kind of like to pivot a little bit and talk about that if you're down. Yeah, what's like the first thing that comes to your mind? Just again, we didn't prepare these questions. Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Pregnancy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not hiding anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no conceal. Yeah.
You know, my sister recently had a baby. And the thing I heard, I think the most complaints about that I'm willing to share on this podcast, was that her abdomen area was so sensitive. And I particularly learned about this. We were at a photo shoot, a sister photo shoot for my mom. And she jumped on my back, and I think she was 1 month postpartum or something. And I can't believe she was like jumping on my back, but she hurt herself so bad because of how sensitive her abdomen was. And I was like, you know, what happened? And she's like, well, first of all, I just had a baby, Sofia, Jesus. Secondly, my abdomen is so sensitive. I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. And it did get me thinking, like, what do you do when your abdomen is sensitive? And I'm totally stealing the question here from you, but I recently had a tear in my abdominal fascia that made it hard to sit or stand for too long, twist my abdomen, and put any type of belt or anything that cinched my hips or waist, the lower abdomen essentially area. It hurt so bad, to the point where like I absolutely, like, it brought me to tears a few times. And I remember thinking, like, thank God for my fanny pack, because I didn't have to choose whether or not I wanted to carry that day. And I'm not in a place where I'm comfortable with a 3 o'clock position. It's just not like I train off body way more. And so having to do like a last minute turnaround to a method of concealment, I was like, thank God. And I hadn't even started it for that reason. So anyway, I have a personal experience with a torn abdomen, not a pregnancy, but have you had any, what do you call them? Patrons of Zendira that have written you owners? Ooh, I like that.
Think of them as owners.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's a whole thing. It's not just the bag. Yeah. Like, it's your whole concealed carry experience. Yeah. Have you had any owners come to you about the bag being their concealment preference for pregnancy or post-pregnancy?
Yes. Yes. Also shoulder problems. Ooh. Oh, okay. I don't know if we can talk about these things, but, okay. I have a friend who is well endowed, and she struggles with appendix carry and just drawing. It just does, like, she's not clearing the way that she needs to. And so they would tell her, well, go to the side. And she was like, well, can I, cause like, you know, just clearing a garment and doing it, she was getting in the way. And it's like, well, there's other ways, but it's not always presented to folks.
Right.
Also, wheelchairs. That is another one where like a fanny pack or a crossbody bag can be really beneficial.
Absolutely. Yeah, we recently had Michaela on, and she spoke to that. That was she's freaking amazing. Yeah. She got to speak to that perspective, which was really helpful. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, a common thing with like pregnancy being such a joy, and yet the vulnerability that comes with it. And also, you know, like maybe having a shoulder injury and the vulnerability you feel. And it just, you know, off-body carry can be a way that you can like face that kind of vulnerability and do something about it and still live the life that you want to live. And I'm pretty happy to be able to be a part of something like that for folks. That was definitely an unexpected joy. Like I do get some really nice emails, even though I complain about having to do emails, but I do get some really nice emails.
That's because those emails that you complain about are ones that anyone would complain about. They're quite interesting and people have a lot of time on their hands. So we'll move past that. But how lovely that's been a benefit of getting into this field. That's awesome.
Yeah. I did not see that coming. But.
Absolutely. And just because we're here on this topic, before we move into the next bag I want to talk about, I like how we're going back and forth. We're not just talking about the bags, like we're getting into like the real life scenario of it all. Bodycon dresses. I love me a bodycon dress. I work really hard for my figure. And there are times that I just really want to wear a bodycon dress. There are some bags that are better than others to actually show the bodycon, right? Like one bag in particular, I'm really excited we're coming out with. And at this point, we've teased it in the Andrew Henry episode, and we'll talk about that today. But we're coming out with a dressy fanny pack, which I kind of see as like an even smaller. Let me know if you disagree, because you know the dimensions way better than me. But the kind of a smaller Friday, Saturday, in a way that's like more squared off and very fanny pack looking. Yeah. Yes. And hopefully by this point, I can release maybe some B-roll over this on our social pages, kind of showing a little bit of a teaser for it. But I love the idea of being able to grab that and wear a cute dress. Actually, recently, I was visiting someone in the Pacific Northwest. I was out to dinner. I really wanted to wear a bodycon dress. And I remember thinking like, dang it, I wish I had the fanny pack. Like this would go perfect with like the style. And or even like the Saturday bag or the smaller size Friday. Like there are options so that you can have a little bit more flexibility with your outfit as well. I feel like that's kind of an obvious answer. I'm really glad you started with kind of like injuries and discomfort, because I think that's one that doesn't get enough attention. It's vulnerable. And I think because of that, people don't feel comfortable maybe sharing as well. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I want to pivot back to like outfit choices.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's been your experience?
Well, I like to push a little bit when it comes to SHOT Show. Just to be like, but you can tell I can't carry in this, right? Like, so I do tend to choose outfits that are very obviously not conducive to what the argument about, well, you should just wear pants and a belt and IWB then. It's like, actually, I can do it a different way. Thanks. So that's that's, I think, the game that I'm playing, and nobody else realizes I'm playing this game or cares, but I'm having fun with it. So.
I like it. The first time I met you, it was Armed Women of America. You had a floor-length floral
probably
dress on. And yeah, that's the day I met you. That's a great example of a dress that is not practical, in my opinion, to draw from. I mean, anything with proper training, repetitions, of course you can make it work. We're not trying to say that this should be the only way you carry, or that if you just like are mildly inconvenienced by IWB carry, you should just give up on that and go to an off-body bag. I think there's a place for both, and that's hopefully what we're conveying here. But yeah, like having to draw a long shirt as it is hard for me, in my opinion, just my experience. If you figured it out, listener, let me know. But of course, like I've figured out ways, but a floor length dress, I mean, yeah.
I I have a buddy in Dallas that is an instructor and was a SEAL, and he has
Casual.
I mean, the most toys, right? Super casual, but the most toys in this industry I've ever seen, and like his closet is just stacked with anything anybody's really ever come out with, and I have definitely been in leggings in his closet with the two of us trying to figure out a thigh holster, just like him trying to, to get it on with enough tension so that I can draw. But then, they always have the elastic loop thing with and I've repetition, I'm sure would help. Also,
Sure.
not the two of us putting our brain cells together, trying to figure that out because we didn't get very far. But I am grateful for folks that have that tactical experience and all of the gear, because like the special operators get the cool stuff, they get some leeway to play with it. Like they'll move their pockets and like nobody's going to yell at them for being out of regs. Like they can just, because they have their reasons. And so playing like basically dress up with this closet, that is solid. But I have to go back to one other thing that you said about actually training with the gear and like rolling with it, because until now it was September. We were talking about what was September and what was October. I had the opportunity to attend the protector course, or level 1 protector course at in Austin at Sheepdog. And I got rolled. Like I had never done this. What is it, January, and my toenails are still blue. So
you got rolled.
But it impacted me in other ways, and mainly like trying to defend. And we were just, tucking a blue gun in, your pant or whatever, appendix, and then trying to, defend it and also get the other person's. And I died so many times. I mean, I couldn't even get my shirt up if somebody was like, on top of me. And it was eye-opening, because
Yes,
I remembered that when I met you at AWA and I was like, hey, well, sure, let me send you something. Because you were like, oh, well, I have to test it. And you were very like, look, I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm going to try to destroy this, basically. Like, I am going to do what I feel like I would need to do in the moment. And I was like, I have more. Take it.
yeah. Because you didn't shy away. Other brands have.
Sure, that's scary. Like, what? But wouldn't you rather know now?
Right.
Yeah.
You would.
Yeah, I would. But I also have bruised toenails. So maybe don't take all my advice. But that was a transformative experience. Having to put my body on the line more so than like being on the range in training, where it's your body and your mind, and you're trying to listen and just line it all up. That was just messy. I now understand people who do that a lot better from a distance. I understand them from a distance. Like people who own rash guards. That's a different level.
That's absolutely, yes. Yeah, there's so many directions I want to go in right now, but first of all, I just want to commend you for doing that at all. Any course that gives you the opportunity, the environment, and the perspective to test your gear beyond the range, the drawing from it, maybe with a timer, because that's not to dismiss that. That is a great way to induce stress, to teach yourself how to handle drawing in a stressful situation with movement and all that. But being in an environment where someone is tasked with making it harder for you to draw, in other words, weapons retention, whether it be they don't want you to draw so that you can't draw on them, they don't want you to draw because they're trying to rob you, they see that you're going for your gun, whatever the case, it changes the tone so much. I think the main thing I took from my course was Craig Douglas's ACQC Extreme Close Quarter Concepts. I mention it on this episode, or excuse me, on this podcast all the time. Absolutely respect Shivworks and what they do. And I think the thing I realized the most from that course was how the goal is just to never get to that point. And I'm not trying to be ignorant to the times where you have absolutely no warning. We've all seen the CCTV footage of a dude who's freaking sprints just like 20 yards and grabs the woman from behind, picks her up and slams her down on the concrete. I mean, there's only so much we can do. Our goal is to be as prepared as possible, as aware as possible. But I remember the first night I left ECQC, I went to go get gas at a gas station. It was like a gas at a gas station. Is that obvious enough?
That or Swedish fish.
Right.
That's the only reason I'm there.
It's actually a very, right. Otherwise, but it was actually a very sketchy gas station. And I remember thinking, like, I should feel empowered right now. Like, I should feel like I can't not say it, like a badass, right? Like I should feel like that right now because I just came from this thing. All it made me want to do was stay as far away from everyone as possible. I had my gun on, IWB, I had my Filster Enigma on. I just kept it on the entire day of ECQC and then threw my real gun in it at the end of the day. I'd used a blue gun with it during the training. And then of course, Craig's, sim guns. I had thrown my Glock 19 back on. That's when I was carrying that. And I just remember being like, oh no, I never want to get in that situation in real life. And that's when it hit me. Like that was a huge theme that was underlying that experience. Would I be more prepared if I had gotten attacked? Yes, of course. But it made me respect the need for awareness and prevention above all. Like that was the big theme. And sometimes I say this and I feel weird about saying it. I don't know if you agree with this, but sometimes I'm like, you almost have to be more aware with an off-body bag. That's not necessarily true, right? In a perfect world, we would be the same amount of aware all the time. But after taking a fanny pack into my jiu-jitsu gym and having my rolling partner choke me with it, because I had it, cross chest, that made me not want to get close to anyone, especially with that mode of carry. Every drawing method comes with its own list of difficulties when you're trying to draw under stress. IWB, when you're laying on the ground and your hips are down, bridging the hips to gain access to the firearm, that's a way to get around that challenge. Don't really have to do that with an off-body bag. If it's still retained to you, the bag should be a little bit easier to maneuver. There, you don't really have to move your hips as much. You can just push and pull with the support hand. So like there's each type of method comes with its own challenge. But would you say that was one of the big lessons you learned at the course? Just like the, oh my God, I never want to be in this situation in real life kind of thing?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Jess, I think she's former UFC fighter, but she
Legit?
Just fought last month at Fight Night in San Jose, and not like I'm obsessed with her or anything.
Right.
But she had offered, we were talking about, the different stages of situational awareness and, getting, they, in their terminology, it was like yellow, orange, red, and black. And black is just panic. Mm-hmm. And she had made a comment the first day about like, let me know if you want to go, there's no better place than here. And I went up to her when we'd gotten to the range time and I was like, yeah, I'll go. And she was like, okay. Huh. I mean, that took a while to get over. In fact, it took a while to really even feel it. Like when she eventually rolled off of me, after the 3 minutes, and, I sat up and we just kind of looked at each other and she was like, you okay? And I'm like, I think so.
Yeah.
I really didn't know.
Right.
Because
the adrenaline,
oh yeah,
takes away all your senses.
Sure. And if you just stepped on a mat the day before and now you've got like this, UFC fighter, just, you're gone. But, thankfully she knew where she was going and she knew why and she knew how. And like, it took a couple days. I think I was on a plane, and that's when I finally, I think, felt safe enough to cry. And so, I mean, who doesn't cry on a plane, right? But you just get those tears where you're just like, okay, it's coming. Oof. Because that was significant. And I mean, I wouldn't trade it. I needed it. I needed to know the, oh crap moment personally. And, you know, going back to like the bags and carrying and being a target no matter what, right? You're a target because you have something somebody else might want, and they don't even know that there's a gun in it. So, you know, you do have to be twice as much. And as a manufacturer, I am happy to say that, like, you need to be twice as aware. Like, it's not casual, and it shouldn't be. So if what you need to do to get to that awareness is find yourself a UFC fighter to take you, you know, to a dark place, then so be it. But
all right, guys, we are going to stop the episode there for a part 1. Please stick around for part 2. If you haven't turned your notifications on, you won't want to miss part 2. We actually get to hint a bit more about a product we have coming out together for 2025. So you don't want to miss it. We also go in further to some concepts with effective and safe off-body carry. If you guys have yet to review the episode or the podcast, please take a moment to do that. I think we're at 4.9 stars on Spotify. So I just want to know who that was, but just kidding. Help us get back to 5. Such a nice thing to be able to say we're at 5, because the guest speakers who come on truly deserve that, in my opinion. Maybe not my hosting, but just rate the guest speakers and not me. For highlights of the episodes, visit She Shield on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, everywhere. We try to do our best to post everywhere. All resources mentioned in this episode, including where to find the Zendira social platforms, the direct website to check out these bags in a little bit more detail, are linked in the show notes, which are the notes below the pod. If you or anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, look into holdmyguns.org. They are an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you. The link to access their website or to find a storage location partner is available in the show notes. Thank you so much, and we will see you in part 2. SOG knives began with the mission to reproduce the original SOG Bowie knife used by the Special Ops Unit MACV SOG. Today, SOG knives are carried with confidence into the most demanding situations. Forged out of tradition, hardened in the field, honed for you, whether you're protecting others or leading an epic hunting expedition, tackling one of life's everyday challenges, or facing your most extreme conditions yet, lead the way with SOG. What began as a single commemorative model soon became a full line of innovative tools, field proven by U.S. Special Forces, even honored as the Navy SEAL knife of choice. I've personally carried SOG knives since I added knives to my everyday carry setup, and have yet to be disappointed by their design and durability. Their craftsmanship is rooted in legacy of honor and courage and is unmatched. With SOG by your side, you are equipped to lead the way, no matter the challenge. So join the ranks of those who dare to push beyond the limits and define their own legacy, and use code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20, to save and to support the pod. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout.